Welcome everyone to our Tuesday evening meditation time and Dhamma reflection. And last week, Sanghamitta gave a very vivid description of when she met her own mind, and many of us were laughing and also resonating deeply. And as promised, we will spend the next few weeks looking more specifically at the five hindrances. And this is what we do meet in our own minds when we begin to meditate. And also, after we've been meditating for a while, often these five hindrances. And it's beautiful that the Buddha has given us this teaching because it underscores the universality of these five hindrances and the non-personal nature of them, that none of us is particularly messed up, particularly a lost hope at all. We all just have untrained minds that are full of these five hindrances that tend to run the show. And we talked about these five hindrances last year, did a series on them, and it's because it's so important. And truly, the very first chapter of our meditation life for all of us is coming to understand these hindrances, to accept them, and then learn ways to work with them. So before I continue, we're just going to name the five hindrances, and we'll do that as a group. So people online and people in the Zoom, so people in the Zoom room and people in the real room. I mean, it's real too. What's going on there? But the here room, the there room, the here, there, anywhere. I do not want to eat green eggs and ham. I do not with a goat, not on a boat. Okay, so that was a hindrance, restlessness. Okay, so
Sense desires.
Okay, so Marilyn's name, number one, the biggie, sense desire. Aversion, thank you so much, Ellen. The second one, very big. And sense desire, this wanting, it's got this energy of like bringing toward. And then the flip side is wanting something else. Not wanting this, wanting something different. And it's got an energy of pushing away. So craving and aversion, the first two. Okay, so Cher is telling us the third is this dullness and drowsiness. So craving, aversion, dullness and drowsiness. Okay, so restlessness and remorse, the fourth. So this dullness and drowsiness has a sort of a direction of down, and then restlessness and remorse has an energy of up. And the fifth hindrance is this kind of going around and around and around. Doubt. Yeah, uncertainty. Yes. So sense, desire, craving, aversion, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness and remorse, and this unsure, uncertain. These are the five energies in every human mind, universal, not personal. And tonight, I'll be talking more about this desire, the very first one, this craving. And before we get into the nitty-gritty, I want to give a context, a perspective. Very important, because sometimes people have come in contact with the Buddha's teachings, and they've heard the Four Noble Truths, and in the shorthand, the Four Noble Truths, the second noble truth is that the cause of our suffering, the cause of our dis-ease is craving. But I want to illustrate that that's a shorthand. It's not all craving. It's not all desire, because then we get confused. Like, oh, I'm not supposed to want anything, and how would you function? So the Buddha is very specific. There are 3 desires that are very strong in the human mind, that are rooted in misunderstanding. They're rooted in ignorance. And these 3 flavors of desire are the ones that are problematic, and the ones that are the source of our suffering, of our stress, of our dis-ease. So the first of these problematic desires is sense craving. And sense craving is this misunderstanding of the senses. And we all have it. We're born into it. We bring it in and we're born into it. That we don't understand our senses. We're looking to our senses for some kind of lasting happiness, and this is fraught. It will never work. Ajahn Chah, very, very famous Thai monk. Thai. Ajahn Chah, famous Thai monk. And this is being recorded. And I'm not sure how he felt about chai. Okay, so I do know he liked Coca-Cola. Ajahn Chah is famous for saying, this idea of some kind of meaningful, lasting happiness through the sense world is like trying to find a turtle with a mustache. It's just not going to work. It won't happen. The second problematic flavor of desire, according to the Buddha, is in Pali, bhava tanha. It's this word tanha. It's this craving. And it actually can also be translated as thirst. Just this insatiable. Bhava tanha, when it's translated, is craving, desire for existence. And this is really the way that this manifests in each of our lives, is really kind of all the ego activity. It's the ways that we are trying to, based on our ignorance, we are trying to prop ourselves up, and we do this through, we all have different flavors of it. For some people, a lot of their sense of themselves, their sense of okayness, their sense of worth comes through image, comes through their appearance, their fitness, their how they look, and we often have many of these flavors. Another big area in our culture is through our accomplishments, through our abilities, through our competency, our efficiency, our getting things done. And for others of us, sometimes it's through the roles that we have in our lives, through being, so we strongly identify with, and there's a fragility there. If we have a lot of invested need around being seen and feeling our own competency, then when something doesn't go very well, or when we're questioned, or when we encounter failure, it's very difficult, and you can feel this the pain of this craving. So for some of us, the roles that we play, that I'm a mother, I'm a very good friend. Sometimes we can even have a lot of our sense of identity, our sense of okayness, existence, wrapped up even in qualities there could be, they're in and of themselves, they're very wholesome, but there's this knotted up entanglement of wanting to be seen that way, and wanting to see ourselves that way. This is a big one for me. I've had a lot of identity around being kind, being patient, being generous. So then at times when I'm not kind, I'm not patient, I'm not generous, or I get seen as not kind, not patient, not generous, it's very painful for me, because my ego is all, wrapped up. And then also, then when I am doing these things, it's not as clean as it could be. This is this craving for existence, this bhava tanha. And the third problematic desire, expression of desire in our lives, is the opposite. It's the craving for non-existence. And in its absolute extreme, it's suicide. It's someone literally just doesn't want to do this anymore. They're in too much pain. They just want out. But then milder forms, all of these things obviously are on a continuum. Milder forms are all the different ways that each and every one of us just checks out. We just veg out, check out, numb out. And all of our addictions would fall into this category of problematic desire. We drink because we just don't want to feel what's really there, or we shop, or we eat, or we do drugs, or sometimes now we can do it on social media and just check out, just and we all have done this, right? We just whoa, it was an hour and a half, seriously, on like 12-minute YouTubes that just or now with this Netflix situation, you just binge watch, a whole season in a weekend, and then you feel like you've been on drugs. This is this third expression of problematic desire. This just wanting to numb out, check out, not deal with things. Vibhava tanha. Because there are desires that, are completely necessary, and there are even desires that are very positive. All of us tonight, this desire to train our minds. All of us tonight, our desire to learn more of the Buddha's teachings. These are all very positive desires and necessary. So sometimes people get confused, and even at the time of the Buddha, people would get confused. There's a passage that to me really illustrates this. It's in the Connected Discourses, the thematic collection, and in Pali, the Samyutta Nikaya, and it's in the 5th book. It's in chapter 51, Sutta 15, and it's this interaction that this Brahmin has with Venerable Ananda, who is the attendant for the Buddha for about the last 25 years of the Buddha's life. And this Brahmin goes to Venerable Ananda and asks, for what purpose, Master Ananda, is the holy life lived under the ascetic Gautama? He's calling him the ascetic Gautama, not the Blessed One or the Buddha, because he doesn't view him that way. He's just another, the Buddha at this point, for this Brahmin, is just another one of the ascetics walking around ancient India. And Venerable Ananda says, it's for the sake of abandoning desire, Brahman, that the holy life is lived under the Buddha. But Master Ananda, is there a path? Is there a way for the abandoning of this desire? And then Venerable Ananda goes on to describe really like the Eightfold Noble Path. And the Brahmin is confused because the Ananda is describing this desire for ending desire, this desire for training the mind, this wholesome desire, and asks, it's impossible that one can abandon desire by means of desire. He's tripped up. And then all these similes that the Buddha and his disciples use. Well then, Brahman, I will question you about this matter. This is Ananda's answer. Answer as you see fit. What do you think, Brahman? Did you earlier have the desire? I'll go to the park. And after you went to the park, did the corresponding desire subside? Yes, sir. So that's the point, that it's not all desires. Don't get tripped up. There are desires that are necessary. There are desires that are healthy. There's desires, all of our desire for growth, all of our desire to be happy. Like the whole path is built on this desire inside of us, this desire to be happy. All the problems come with our ignorance, with our misunderstanding of what real happiness is, and the ways to go about experiencing and discovering and cultivating this real happiness. So I hope that's clear. So there's these three problematic desires, and these three problematic desires are the first hindrance. These desires that are rooted in confusion, in ignorance, in delusion. And we meet them when we begin to meditate. And the Buddha describes meditation over and over and over again as a skill. It's a skill that we're learning, and it's a skill that we're practicing. That's why it's called practice. We're practicing it and learning it. In the suttas, the Buddha gives similes comparing learning meditation to being a craftsperson, being a musician, being an acrobat, being a cook, being a carpenter, being a surgeon. These are all different similes that the Buddha uses. So us learning meditation is, again, another really helpful framework to think of it as a skill, and that we're developing tools, we're developing ability. Just like learning to play the violin, or learning a new language, or learning how to rock climb, we're learning how to meditate. And it like any skill, you have to, the beginning of making the commitment to become a student and to develop a skill it all starts with desire. This is all built on desire. So is this clear? Yeah. So this first hindrance that we encounter when we begin to meditate, all of the other hindrances, it's clear on face value that they're problematic. When we're irritated, who feels unpleasant, and when you're dull and drowsy, it feels unpleasant. When you're agitated and feeling remorse, it's unpleasant. When you're unsure, uncertain, can't figure it out, unpleasant. But when you're thinking about that cup of coffee and you're lying in bed, it's not so unpleasant. It's actually quite pleasant. Actually can help you get out of bed and motivate you, sense desire, it's much more difficult to see the problematic nature of it. Just checking the battery, we're not plugged in, but we're okay. Yeah. It takes a little bit of investigation and maybe even a little bit of convincing that this is problematic. I mean, it's clear some desires are clear that they're problematic. Like when we're overspending what we make, it's clear this isn't good. But just overall, desire, sense desire, like the ego desire, the checking out desire, these tend to be forces that basically are running our lives. They're just there all the time. So I want to try and explore the idea that they're problematic. There's this book, Bodhi Paula just gave it to me about a week ago. It's by Chade Meng Tan. Does anyone know this book or know of this? So Chade Meng Tan is, he works for Google. He's an engineer. And he started, he's from Singapore, and he became Buddhist when he was about 20 years old, and has had a daily meditation practice. And then he went to work for Google way early days. He's employee number 107 at Google. And early on, he started meditation in the workplace. And he's sort of the person that brought mindfulness and meditation into the corporate world. And his first book is Search Inside Yourself, and this is his second book, Joy on Demand. But I think he does a great job of explaining the problematic nature of these desires, and he uses a simile to do it. So this is on page 10 in his book. There was a man who had a skin condition that made his skin itch all the time. Every time he scratched his itch, he felt good. Then one day, a skillful doctor cured him of his skin condition, and he didn't have to scratch anymore. He realized that scratching his itch had felt good, but not having to scratch an itch at all feels even better. We have a mind condition that makes us itch, and he's got here for 2 types of pleasure, and I want to say 3, so I'm going to add that in. We have a mind condition that makes us itch for 3 types of pleasure. Pleasure of the senses, pleasure of the ego, and I'm going to add pleasure of numbing out, checking out. When our senses are pleasantly stimulated, as when we eat something tasty, or our ego is pleasantly stimulated, as when we're praised for something we did, or when we get to just veg out on the couch, we feel good. We feel a sense of happiness, which is good. What is even better is if we can feel joy independent of sense or ego or checking out pleasure. For example, when we're eating chocolate, we experience joy, and when we're just sitting there not eating chocolate, we still experience joy. In order to do this, we train the mind to access joy even when it's free from stimulation. And that's possible. That's exactly what the Buddha is offering and instructing us in. And so, yeah, we all have this skin condition, we all have this mind condition. And then the idea that, wow, we could just feel pleasure, we could just feel joy regardless of what's going on outside. This is why we're training our minds. This is what is possible through meditation. To become, instead of being the slave to these three desires and run around by them, we more become the master. This is what is possible. And when we begin this process of training the mind, what happens is that we come in contact with these wisdom teachings, and we start to understand our own what's within our control and what's not within our control, which is different than what we think before we come in contact with wisdom teachings. And then the teachings start to influence what we desire and influence what we value. And then we just start on this beautiful, virtuous cycle. And then we start to desire and wish for wholesome, beneficial states of mind. And that starts to strengthen. And some of our desires that are rooted in ignorance start to weaken. And this is how the path unfolds. It's all governed by wisdom. That's why it's not like this self-improvement program. So the desires that are problematic are rooted in ignorance, and then the desires that are non-problematic, they're rooted in wisdom. So the more that we can grow our wisdom, and that's through learning the teachings, and it's also through observing our own minds, observing our own emotions, our own thoughts. Then the wisdom starts to grow, and the Buddha knows this. That's why, with the Eightfold Noble Path, the first part is right view. It's to do with what we're understanding, and the more that we learn the teachings, put what we've learned into practice, the more that this process gains momentum. It's wonderful. And then eventually it starts to have momentum of its own. And then the meditation just is kind of doing itself. And it's very, very amazing. So the simile the Buddha gives us in terms of why sense desire and ego desire and checking out desire, why these are problematic, has to do with this ignorance, wisdom, peace. And this is from, again, the Connected Discourses. And it's chapter 46, Sutta 55. And it's, again, it's a Brahmin asking the Buddha a question. And this Brahmin asks, what is the cause, Mr. Gautama? Again, a Brahmin that's not a follower of the Buddhist at this point, and just calling him by his name. What is the reason why sometimes even hymns that are long practiced don't spring to mind, let alone those are not practiced? And why is it that sometimes even hymns that are long unpracticed spring to mind, let alone those that are practiced? So the Brahman's just, at least the Brahman has been noticing in his own life. Sometimes, I'm thinking clearly and I can remember things easily. But then other times I can't at all. Even stuff that I've practiced a lot, I can't remember it. And I get all mixed up and asks, why is that? And the Buddha answers, Brahman, there's a time when your heart is overcome and mired in these problematic desires, and you don't truly understand the escape from sensual desire that has arisen. At that time, this is what's important, at that time you don't truly know or see what's good for yourself, good for another, or good for both. When we're caught up in our desires, our thinking gets clouded and our judgment gets clouded. And so even hymns that are long practiced don't spring to mind, let alone those that are not practiced. So here's the simile that the Buddha gives. Suppose there was a bowl of water that was mixed with dye such as red lac, turmeric, indigo, or rose madder. Even a person with clear eyes checking their own reflection wouldn't truly know it or see it. And this is what happens when the heart mind is caught up in these three problematic desires. It muddies the water. The sort of modern day version of this simile would be when and we've all seen water that has gasoline floating around on the top, and it's amazing. I mean, we know, like, ooh, that's gross, but then there's another part, like visually it's actually quite interesting. It's quite attractive. It's got all these different patterns, but we certainly aren't seeing our reflection clearly when there's water with gasoline on it. So this is what happens to us when we're mired, caught up in, swept away in desire. Our judgment gets messed up with and not sound, and we don't actually know what's good for ourselves and what's good for the other and what's good for both. And we can all relate to this happening. And then I'll end with, there's a very beautiful simile that the Buddha gives. This is several times in the suttas. This particular time I've taken it from the long discourses, the second a second sutta, Digha Nikaya 2, but it's many times in the suttas. And the Buddha's talking about what it feels like when we're we're not in the grips of desire and it's starting to loosen. Suppose a person who's gotten into debt were to apply themselves to work and their efforts proved successful. They would pay off the original loan and have enough left over to support their partner. Thinking about this, they would be filled with joy and happiness. This is what it feels like when, some craving has abated. It's like when we're caught up in craving, the problematic cravings, the Buddha's comparing it to being in debt. And we are. When there's a lot of craving in the mind, literally, we are borrowing from the future, literally. And we're going into debt. And then when the intensity of that desire, lifts, it's like paying off a debt. And it's like being alone free. It's a great feeling. And we can all relate to that, I'm sure, where we've had something in our lives that was more running the show than our wise adult person knew what was the right thing to do. And it's borrowing from the future. And then when you are able to unhook from that and not be controlled by it and driven by it, it's like getting out of debt. It's an amazing feeling. Yeah. So I'll end there and open it up for anyone, any questions, any comments, examples, all very, very welcome. It's a big topic. It's a big force in our lives. Scott, please.
I just remember when a talk with Ajahn Sona gave quite a few years ago, talking about how you can measure your progress in meditation. He says the biggest measure of progress is contentment, because as the craving subsides, contentment sort of increases.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a good arbitrary measure.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you don't think you're going anywhere, and you realize, well, maybe I'm a lot more content now than I was in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. And I've heard Ajahn Sona also say, this is so useful, I think, that our craving, and it really links into that last simile that I just read from the Buddha, talks about our craving, our greed comes from a sense of lack. And the counter to it is contentment. And this goes so against the culture that we're in, to really practice this idea of this is good enough. My coffee's not quite as hot as I usually like it to be, but it's okay. It's good enough. Whereas, we're often just fiddling, trying to dial it into this. We have a lot of this in our culture. Yeah, Kelly.
So it's good enough. I understand the suffering with wanting my coffee to be a certain way. I just gave up coffee because it's just not working.
So you're out of debt.
Or not,
you're out of debt. It's great.
Yeah. What would you
It's
say,
huge.
like this checking out thing? I find what would you say about it's my life is just good enough, and if a lack of desire for growth or trying new things or just being open to being present instead of like robbing yourself from the future with something desire or not desire. Like what would you say on that? Like should you become complacent in a sense, right? And complacency isn't really growth or
Right.
pushing yourself, but
Yeah.
is that checking out in a sense of, oh, this is good enough, like I feel happy in a sense, but do you just stop, or like what would you, you know?
The teachings of the Buddha, I will say, I want to do it at some point, that we do a series on paradoxes, because I think that the spiritual path can be captured in this idea of paradox. Not just the Buddha's teachings, the teachings of Jesus, that, you know, so very often there are these two things that seem opposite. They seem to be in conflict, and to cancel the other one out. This is in many ways. Like the Buddha's path, the most important thing is spiritual friendship, and yet this, we're supposed to do all this solitude. You know, there's all these things that seem like, you know, we need to be cultivating right view, but we need to not have any fixed views. You know, there are, so this, you're just put your finger on another paradox, that, and the answer in the spiritual life is balance. We're constantly needing to bring two opposing forces into balance, and let them, let the cognitive mind have a break, and allow two things that seem opposite to work together and balance. So contentment must be balanced with a sense of spiritual urgency, and spiritual urgency must be balanced with contentment. So those are those two forces. So there's this, you know, background understanding that I'm you know, that Buddha talks about practicing like your hair is on fire. You know, like you really understand, like it's super important where I let the mind go, where I let the attention. But if that's all, if that was the only teaching, we'd all be like, you know, totally high strung, and, you know, no, it needs to be balanced with contentment. So and constantly, it is, to me, this, it's lovely. The spiritual life is like balancing a broom in your hand. It is just a constant feedback system, where constantly, then this is where mindfulness comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, because you get to these levels, and I feel the most peace and happiness I felt.
Yeah, exactly.
Ever, but it's like, and I have this incredible housing. Do I just stop? It's like,
Right.
that's okay. I'm good now. I don't
Yeah.
need to desire more. I don't need to desire land to build, maybe help more people and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like, and that's where I like
Yeah.
that, the balance. And
Balance,
sure
balance, and that you want both there, because both are crucial.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scott. Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you know, in different settings, like if I'm on a 30-day meditation retreat, I really want each single meditation time to be cultivating contentment, and I also want to make the most of a 30-day meditation retreat. There should be lots of spiritual urgency at the same time. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. Ellen.
How does intention affect the wholesomeness or not wholesomeness of the desire?
It's sort of everything. Yeah. The Buddha says that intention is what is influencing the karma of something. So that's why, you know, we take precepts to not kill any living being intentionally. But then, I mean, I'm walking around, I'm sure I'm stepping on bugs, but there's no intention. So intention is huge. And then you can check your intention. And there's a teaching on this that the Buddha gives to his son. When you get feedback, like, so maybe I have the intention to help someone. And then maybe I just barrel in there and do what I think would be helpful. And then I get feedback of, that's not helpful. If my intention is genuinely to help, I will take that feedback and I'll be like, oh, what is it that I could do that would be helpful? And so sometimes we fool ourselves about our intention. You know, and we insist on helping the way that we think. But do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What if you're doing something really dark, but you don't understand that it's dark, and you're like believing that it's like for the better? Like, I'm gonna, for example, remove this child from this mother because it's for the best, but it's totally delusion. Like would you get karma back for that?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you convince yourself that murdering these people is for in their best, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. But that's rooted in delusion.
Yeah.
It's rooted in ignorance. Yeah. And it's amazing. There's actually a teaching, and this takes a bit. Sometimes it's counterintuitive. There's actually a teaching that if I okay, so I've not come in contact with any spiritual teaching. I'm making up an example. I've not come in contact with any spiritual teachings, and I think partying is fantastic. You know, I'm the life of the party. I'm go gusto, drinking, you know, et cetera, getting other people to drink. You know, come. Yeah, we'll be a blast. Da 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 da. So this is rooted in ignorance, right? I don't realize that this is unwholesome, and foolish. So initially we think, okay, well, I'm not as responsible because I don't realize. But actually, karmically, it's heavier karma because I'm more wholehearted doing it. If I actually realize this is a bit foolish, I'm still doing the same thing, but there's a little bit more wisdom. Maybe I'm not as gung-ho trying to get everyone else drunk. Yeah. So that's what the Buddha's teachings say, that it's actually a bit heavier karma when I'm completely deluded and have no idea that this isn't a good thing. Whereas I initially thought, well, then I'm not really responsible. And we are. Yeah. That's why, like, this is all about wisdom. It's all about growing our wisdom. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll end with the Brahma Vihara of Metta.
May you be well. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be loving. May you be calm. May you be safe. May no problems come to you. May no difficulties come to you. May no harm come to you. May you meet with spiritual success. May you have the patience, the courage, the strength, the determination, the wisdom to meet and overcome the inevitable problems in life, to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties in life, to meet and overcome the inevitable frustrations in life, and to meet and overcome the inevitable failures in life. May the whole of your hearts be filled with loving friendliness. May every single cell in your body be filled with loving friendliness. May every level of your consciousness be purified by loving friendliness. May you build a healthy, happy aura of loving friendliness all around you, through which no evil thought, word, or intention or any form of harm may penetrate, but from which loving friendliness may radiate in all directions, and may you be protected. May the merit of our practice be shared with all beings, named and unnamed. Lise, Blair, Edita, Brian,
Christina.
may all beings be well and happy.